All right, we are at the end of this course. I'm excited, bittersweet, because I really liked it. So, um, I chose to research the countries, the United States, because that was one that we had to research. China and India. And the topic of interest was early childhood education and how early I looked at early childhood education through the prism of it being an indicator for success later on in life, right? Um, and what I found is that, in short, right, there needs to be more data on early childhood education and on its effects. So, in the report, I write that there is a ton of information. There's a lot of information out there that essentially uh, posits early childhood education as something that um, nation states need to focus on because early childhood education from ages from birth to age 5 is so important because from birth to age 5 there are critical um, uh, synapses firing, um, brain building uh, exercises going on in your child's head or in a child's head. Um, that we need to tap into the brain is when the brain is working like that in from uh, birth to age 5, we are teaching the brain, right? uh we are teaching the brain what's important when we teach kids in that time frame. We when we put them in an educational setting, we let them know that education is important, right? Education in that time frame between birth and age 5 does not have to be formal, right? It can and should also be informal, right? Parents are first teachers, so early childhood education, at even at home, is important, right? But nation states need to focus on developing an early childhood education system that is universal, and that is high quality because high quality early childhood education produces um, early childhood education, high quality early childhood education produces um, a number of benefits. Those benefits include independence in language development and literacy, critical thinking, self-control, and self-confidence, right? Um, and when we talk about equity, right, when we consider equity and we consider what it takes to live in an equitable world, critical thinking, right? Critical thinking and self-confidence are key, right? Are key in making that happen. Um, so um in the past couple of years, right? Um, since 2010, India, okay, that's where I was going. India, the United States, and China have all pushed for one creating a universal education or early childhood education system, and pushing individual states, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, to making that a reality. So, in the state, or excuse me, in the United States of America, education is split up between um, the federal government and the states, right? States have more say over education at the local level than the national government does, right? in India and in China, they have, while India has more of a constitutional um, democratic, if you will, I'm sorry, a democratic republic like the United States does, um, it's still a little more centralized, just like um, China's government is through um, not a single party like China, but their goals are aligned, is what I'm trying to say, right? There really isn't a nation state or a federal government and states under the federal government that can sort of challenge the federal government in what the federal government wants, right? The only nation state of the three that has that type of system is the United States of America, which is why the United States of America trails India and China in the expansion of their early childhood education programs. Now, early childhood education is not compulsory in any one of these states, right? While there's a lot of data that suggests that early childhood education is important, is an indicator, right, of economic development for the nation state as a whole, but economic attainment for the individual as well. It's still not compulsory, right? And education in these three states is not compulsory outside of the primary and secondary education system. It's only compulsory in primary, lower um, secondary, and upper secondary education in the United States alone. There, there wasn't enough time, and there was so much, but there is evidence, or excuse me, there in the evidence, the data, and thinking critically about the data, as I think critically about the data, I see a correlation with not having an expanded and universal early childhood education system and dropout rates and education that's not compulsory in or past high school, right? I also see, remember the synapses firing and what we teach kids 0 to 5, right? There is also, when we talk about cultural diversity, there is also in China and in India, we should consider the cultural makeup of those two countries. It's not like the United States of America, right, where cultural identity is also dispersed by race, if you will, or categorized by race. Um, it is more geographical, right, and linguistic in nature for both countries. So uh, the cultural makeup of both of these states often include um often include uh geography, right? Whether or not you were in a rural area or a an urban area, right? And access to education uh in both of those in both of those geographical landscapes, right? Um if we consider um high school dropout rates or school dropout rates just in general, especially in um, India and in China, we must consider the geography, the geographical context, right? There are higher dropout rates in rural China than there are in urban China, right? Because there's income inequality based on geography. The closer you are to urban cities like Hong Kong and Shanghai, right, the more money you're making. If you're in the more rural areas, indeed, the state of China, or excuse me, the nation state, right, of China, the government stopped internal immigration or migration, excuse me, for a very long time. If you were born in rural China a while ago, that's where you stayed for your entire life, right? So That has since changed. Um, and it's been a while since it's changed, but things are ingrained in the system, right? So the further away you are from um, an urban center, the less money you're making, the less opportunities you have, and the more agrarian the work that you're supposed to do is, which means I cannot afford to have, I am usually only allowed to have one, maybe two children, especially in China. Um, I cannot afford for that child to go to school forever when they are capital. Same thing in India, right? The closer you are to city centers, the more money you're making, right? And India's agrarian population has the same inequalities, educational inequalities, and opportunities, right? Um, opportunistic inequalities, if you will, as they do in China. Um, so what do we do? First and foremost, the first thing that needs to happen is we need more data. We need more data on early childhood education because it's all sporadic, right? Early childhood education, we need to have the OECD has a commission on early childhood education, but it takes a while for data to come down the pipeline, and that is a relatively new organization. So we need more data. We need more literature on early childhood education. We need more literature on the equitable distribution of early childhood education, not just in the United States, but globally as well, right? We need more, uh, we need a stronger emphasis. A stronger emphasis needs to be put on early childhood education in the United States of America, but also globally, right? Because we are missing out as practitioners, we are missing out on the most crucial time to set kids up for success academically and social emotionally, right? Think about all of the problems that we have with children. Another fact that I'd seen is kids that have early childhood education are less likely, right, to present signs of um, what did it say? Present signs of special needs. It's all environmental. So if we can, at the time of learning, help these kids, help these young people exercise the muscle memory, and not just muscle memory, but the muscles, the synapses, right? The electrical fire pings, if you will, if we can help them, um, fire pings is not a word, but if we can help them uh, turn their uh, no, if we can help them go from just learning about the world in a more passive manner um, to a more active manner from birth to age 5, we'd set our kids up for success, notwithstanding income inequality, right? Like not taking into account income inequality, not taking into account geographical inequality, not taking into account racial inequality, not taking into account linguistic inequality, right? And I'm thinking about India in that regard, not thinking about religious inequality, again, India and parts of China. I, uh, if we can just raise the level of education across the board globally, all of those inequalities will start to change. They'll start to shift, right? There has been shifts in I wrote about in India and in China, right? Great shifts in income inequality and poverty levels, right? But then I also touch on um multidimensional poverty, right? Listen, I was all over the place. But if we raise education from the ground up and start with early childhood education and really tap into what we know about childhood development, the world would be a better place. And that's why this is a bittersweet ending, because I want to know so much more. I want to do that research and write that literature. So read that literature and do the work to, like I said, lift the profession up, lift the industry up in a way that that starts with and honors, right, early childhood development. Um, thank you.